My hands were shaking when they pulled me from my seat. I did not expect this. Nobody expected this. One moment I was standing at the speaker's platform, explaining why Earth deserved full membership in the conquered of worlds. The next moment, 3 guards in golden armor were dragging me across the polished floor while 14 alien delegates watched in silence. My name is Elias Vance. For 6 years I served as humanity's envoy to the galactic community. I had spent those years swallowing insults, bowing to creatures who considered us primitive, and smiling through every humiliation. I did it because my daughter Maya, back home on Earth, needed a peaceful galaxy to grow up in. I did it because my wife, Clara, believed in me. I did it because I thought diplomacy could work. I was wrong. The grand chamber of the neutral station floated in empty space, far from any star. It was built to be a place of fairness where all species could speak as equals, but fairness, I learned too late, is only a word when the powerful choose to honor it. Just minutes earlier, I had been presenting Earth's case. I spoke about our medical advances. I offered our terraforming technology to worlds suffering from dying soil. I promised peaceful cooperation. My voice was calm. My words were careful. Every phrase had been practiced for weeks. Then Lord Thasic of the Kyle Dominion stood up. Thasic was tall and thin, with skin like cracked stone and eyes that glowed a pale blue. His species had ruled this council for 4,000 years. He held up a glowing data crystal and spoke in his slow, cold voice. We have evidence, he said, that humanity has built forbidden weapons at the outer edges of their star system, hidden tools of destruction, violations of the sacred treaties. I felt my stomach drop. This was a lie. Earth had no such weapons. I raised my hand to object. I demand independent verification, I said, keeping my voice steady. These claims are false. I request that neutral inspectors examine Earth systems before any judgment is made. Thasic smiled. It was not a kind smile. The evidence has already been examined, he said, by the Dominion's own scientists. The room erupted in whispers. I looked around at the delegates. The Voron ambassador would not meet my eyes. The Elim representative looked sad, but said nothing. The Krell envoy was already nodding along with Thasic. I understood then. This vote had been decided before I ever walked into the chamber. The speaker of the conquered banged her silver staff against the floor. The whispers stopped. We will vote now, she announced, on the matter of humanity's guilt. I tried to speak. I tried to demand a proper trial. I tried to remind them of the laws they were breaking, but the guards were already moving toward me. The vote happened in less than 2 minutes. 14 species voted against me. 5 voted to give Earth a chance to respond. The rest stayed silent too, afraid of the Dominion to take a side. Elias Vance, envoy of Earth, the speaker said, her voice without emotion. You are found guilty of conspiracy against galactic peace. As the legal representative of your species, you will bear the penalty for your world's crimes. I felt the golden armor of the guards close around my arms. I did not fight. There was no point. I looked at the cameras broadcasting this moment to 800 worlds, and I thought of my daughter watching on Earth. I kept my face calm. I kept my eyes clear. I would not give them a frightened human to remember As they led me toward the side doors, I caught the eyes of the Voron ambassador. One last time, she looked away quickly, shame burning on her face. "You have no idea what you have just done," I said quietly, loud enough for the microphones to catch. "You have never met humans who were not smiling." Thasik laughed, actually laughed. "Brave words from a small creature," he said. The doors closed behind me. They took me to a chamber I did not know existed. It was circular with a single raised platform in the center. Above the platform hung a device that glowed with a soft white light. The guards forced me to kneel on the platform. They did not speak. They did not need to. Through the transparent walls I could see the grand chamber. The delegates were watching. The cameras were recording. This was meant to be a lesson to every species in the galaxy, a warning, a show of power. I thought about Clara. I thought about Maya. I thought about the letters I had written to them but never sent, still sitting in a drawer in my quarters. I thought about Earth. For 6 decades I knew Earth had been preparing for this possibility. Not because we wanted war, because we had learned from our own history that hope without preparation leads to graveyards. Humans had fought each other for 10,000 years. We had learned what betrayal looked like. We had learned what it required. The conquered species had evolved in peaceful worlds with gentle weather and few natural enemies. They learned to cooperate early. They never learned what we learned. They never understood that a smiling human is not always a harmless human. The device above me began to hum. Its light grew brighter. I raised my head one last time. I looked directly into the camera. "Clara, Maya, I love you both," I said. "Earth, remember me kindly. Remember that I tried." Then I spoke one last sentence, not for my family, not for Earth, for the 14 species about to make the worst mistake in their long, long histories. You should have listened. The light grew bright. The broadcast across 800 worlds cut to black. On a quiet evening in the city of Geneva, an old woman named Admiral Helena Corgia was sitting in a small office deep beneath the Alps mountains. She was 73 years old. She had served Earth's military for 51 years. She had been waiting, she sometimes thought, her entire adult life for a phone call she hoped would never come. When the broadcast ended, she sat down, her cup of tea, with hands that did not tremble at all. She looked at the red phone on the corner of her desk. The phone had never rung in its 40 years of existence. She picked it up. The person on the other end did not speak first. They waited because this was the protocol. The person who picked up this phone was the one who gave the orders. Admiral Corgia took a slow breath. She thought of Elias Vance. She had met him once years ago at a dinner in Paris. He had shown her photos of his daughter, a bright girl with curly hair, and her father's serious eyes. "Activate directive Silent Dawn," Admiral Corgia said into the phone. Her voice was soft. Her voice was steady. Her voice carried the weight of a world that had finally, truly been pushed too far. "Wake the Deep Reserve." She placed the phone back on its cradle. Across the Sol system, in places no alien sensor had ever detected, 340,000 warships began to open their eyes. The galaxy had just executed humanity's diplomat in front of the whole watching universe. Earth was about to answer. The call came at 3:47 in the morning. I Was dreaming about my late wife when the aide shook my shoulder, her face pale. In the dim blue light of my quarters. Told me everything before she said a single word. Admiral Tanaka, she said, Geneva has issued Directive Silent Dawn. I sat up slowly, my bones ached. I was 68 years old, and I had been waiting for this moment for 30 years. My name is Hiroshi Tanaka. I am the Fleet Admiral of Earth's Deep Reserve. Most people on Earth do not know I exist. Most people on Earth do not know. The Deep Reserve exists. That was always the point. I dressed in my old uniform. The buttons had been pressed many times by my late wife Margaret before she passed away. I had kept it in a special closet, cleaned, and ready for the day I would need it. The walk through my mountain bunker was long and quiet. Soldiers stood at attention as I passed. None of them spoke. They had all seen the broadcast. They had all watched Ambassador Vance die. When I reached the command center, the main display was already showing what had happened. A young officer was wiping tears from her face. A senior captain was staring at the floor with his jaw tight. Play it again, I said. They played the footage. I watched it. Without blinking, I watched the envoy kneel with dignity. I watched him speak his final words. I watched the light grow bright. I had known Elias Vance not well, but enough. He had come to this very bunker once 5 years ago for a briefing he was not supposed to know about. He had looked at the ships on our screens, and he had said something I would never forget. I hope I can make sure you never have to use these, he had told me. I had told him I hope so too. Put me through to Geneva, I said. The screen shifted. Admiral Helena Courtois appeared, sitting at her desk with her hands folded. She looked tired but calm. We had been classmates at the Academy 50 years ago. We had been friends then. We were something harder now. Hiroshi, she said. Helena, I answered. She did not speak for a long moment. Then she said the words I had spent 3 decades dreading. Directive Silent Dawn is authorized. Full activation of the Deep Reserve. You have operational command. Understood. Hiroshi, her voice cracked slightly. My advance watched her father die on the evening news. She is 7 years old. I closed my eyes for 1 second, only one. I understand the mission, Admiral. Do not target civilians. Do not target medical centers. Do not target food supplies. Do not become what they became, but everything else, Hiroshi. Every warship, every command base, every leader who signed the order against Elias Vance. I understand. She nodded once. The screen went dark. I turned to my officers. I looked at each of them in turn. These were men and women I had trained for 20 years. They had spent their entire careers preparing for a war they prayed would never come. Open the Deep Reserve channels, I said. The main display shifted. It showed a map of the Sol system, then it zoomed out to show nearby systems, then further and further. Small blue dots began to appear. Hundreds at first, then thousands, then tens of thousands, then more. The Concordat believed Earth had perhaps 40 warships. That number was correct. In a way, we had 40 warships that anyone was allowed to see. The Deep Reserve had 340,000. They were hidden in the shadows of rogue planets drifting in cold orbits beyond the reach of any scanner. They were parked in deep space, their engines cold, their crews in long sleep. They had been built over 6 decades by a world that smiled at the galaxy while never ever forgetting what betrayal looked like. For we remembered, humans remembered. We remembered the wars of our own history. We remembered the treaties that were signed and broken. We remembered every time a peaceful promise ended ashes, and when the galaxy welcomed us with polite words and secret contempt. We nodded and smiled and built ships in the dark, not because we wanted war, because we had learned through 10,000 years of painful experience that hope without preparation is just a prayer. The junior officer beside me spoke quietly, "Sir, all ships are responding. Full readiness in 2 hours." I nodded. "Bring up the target list." The display changed. 14 species there. Military bases, their war fleets there. Command structures, the names of every senior official who had voted against Ilias Vance, the locations of every leader who had signed the false evidence against Earth. Every target was carefully chosen, not a single hospital, not a single school, not a single farming world. Humans had drawn that line in our own painful history during the terrible Mars conflict of 2331. We had learned what happened when war lost its limits. We would not teach the galaxy that lesson, but the lesson we would teach them was going to be remembered for a very long time. "Sir," the young officer said, her voice was trembling slightly, "may I ask you something?" "Yes." "Will they survive this?" I looked at her. She was 24 years old. She had a kind face. She had never seen what I had seen during the dark years of our own history. "Some of them will," I said, "the ones who surrender, the ones who confess, the ones who show that they can learn. Those species will survive, and one day they will rebuild, and one day they will stand beside us as true equals." "And the others?" I did not answer for a moment. I thought about Ilias Vance kneeling on that platform. I thought about his daughter watching the broadcast. I thought about a galaxy that had mistaken our kindness for weakness. The others will learn why humans should not be tested. I gave the launch authorization at 6:00 in the morning local time. Across the Sol system, engines that had been cold for decades began to glow. Ships that had drifted silently in the dark for a generation woke up. My aide brought me a message from a surprising source. It was from a small colony on Mars. A group of school children had recorded a video. They were holding handmade signs. The signs said, "For Ambassador Vance, bring peace home." I watched the video twice, then I turned back to my command screen. "Phase 1 targets," I said. "The call home fleet at Dominion Prime, 1,200 warships guarding the capital, their entire military command." The officer nodded. "Ready, sir." "Proceed." 340,000 Earth warships were now moving, not all of them to the same place. Most stayed in reserve, watching, waiting, ready to respond to anything the galaxy might try. But a chosen few were on their way to teach the first lesson. The Concordat had killed our envoy and laughed about it. They had thought humans were small creatures, harmless, barely worth noticing. They were about to discover something they had never suspected. Humans had spent the last 6 years of diplomacy learning everything there was to know about the Concordat, every weakness, every blind spot, every shield frequency, every command protocol, every hidden base. Ambassador Vance had not just been a diplomat. He had been the most successful intelligence gatherer in human history. Every polite dinner he attended, every boring meeting he sat through, every handshake he exchanged had been sending information back to Earth. He had known from the day he took the assignment what his true mission was. He had accepted that mission knowing it might cost him his life. He had been our eyes in the dark, and now, because of his 6 years of patient, quiet work, we knew exactly where to strike. I walked over to the photograph of Margaret on my desk. I touched the glass frame softly. "Forgive us, my love," I whispered. "They would not let us be peaceful." I turned back to the command center. "All ships," I said, "you have your orders. Begin." The first human response fleet crossed into Concordat space at 12 minutes past 6:00 in the morning, Geneva time. The galaxy, in its long and settled calm, was about to wake up. I was in my orbital palace above Voron Prime when my chief aide burst through the door without knocking. In 300 years of service, she had never done this before. Her face was the color of wet ash. "High Matron," she said, "the humans. You must see this now. My name is Selva. I am the trade minister of the Voron Collective. I am 240 years old. I have served my people for most of my long life, and 3 days ago I made the worst decision of that long career. I voted to condemn Ambassador Ilyas Vance. I did not believe the evidence against him. I knew the charges were false, but Lord Thassac of the Call Dominion had pulled me aside the night before the vote. He had reminded me of our trade contracts. He had hinted at what would happen to Voron commerce if we sided with the primitives, so I voted with the majority. I told myself it was politics. I told myself nobody would really suffer. 3 days later, I watched the main display screen in my palace, and I understood what I had done. The screen showed a human, a single human, an older man in a dark uniform, sitting at a simple wooden desk. He introduced himself as Fleet Admiral Hiroshi Tanaka. He spoke in perfect galactic standard, calm and clear, as if he were reading a weather report. He said 3 things. First, that Ambassador Vance had been innocent, and that his death had been a planned action by beings who chose fear over fairness. Second, that the vote against him had been decided before the chamber ever gathered, and that humanity had proof of the conversations that had arranged it. Third, that Earth had issued response orders against the military forces and leaders of the 14 species who voted for the killing, not against civilians, not against children, not against hospitals or schools or farms, but against every warship, every command base, and every official whose name was on the signed document. He gave a list of those names. Mine was on it. "This is not war," the Admiral said, his voice still gentle. "This is accountability. You chose to treat us as lesser beings. You will now be treated as the equals you always feared we were." The broadcast ended. In my palace, my aides looked at me. Waiting, I looked at the display. I tried to speak. No words came. Then Lord Thassac's private channel opened on my screen. His cracked stone face appeared. He was laughing. "Do not worry, High Matron," he said. "The humans are bluffing. Their fleet is small. My home guard alone has 1,200 warships. We will discipline these monkeys within the week, and this embarrassing broadcast will be forgotten. I wanted to believe him. My whole body wanted to believe him. Lord Thasic, I said carefully, are you certain? They seemed very calm. Calm is the mask of the weak, he said. They are trying to frighten us. It will not work. The connection ended. 6 hours later, the call home fleet stopped existing. I do not mean it was defeated. I do not mean it was scattered. I mean it simply was not there anymore. Our long-range sensors picked up strange gravity waves, shifting patterns of bent space, and then nothing. 1,200 warships gone in less than 4 minutes. I sat in my palace in complete silence. My aides did not speak. The whole room felt like it was holding its breath. Reports began to come in from other systems. The Krell Dominion had lost its central command station above their homeworld. Not damaged, removed. Sensor records showed a single human ship appearing, broadcasting a warning to evacuate, waiting 10 minutes for the station staff to escape in life pods, and then hitting the empty station with a weapon we had no name for. The station had been reduced to a fine cloud of dust. Every crew member had survived because the humans had given them time to leave. The Ithran fleet, which had been hunting for the human response force across 3 systems, was ordered to return home. They had found nothing. The humans were moving too fast, striking too precisely, and disappearing before any of our ships could close the distance. In 18 hours, the humans destroyed 30 military targets across 11 systems without losing a single ship, 34 without a single loss, and not one civilian had been harmed. Not one. I thought about what this meant. The humans could clearly have harmed civilians if they wanted to. They could have turned cities to ash. They could have made their revenge terrible beyond measure. Instead, they were being careful. Each strike was precise. Each target was a warship or a command center. Each enemy crew was given a chance to surrender. This was not rage. This was something far worse. This was a species showing us with cold patience that they could do anything they wanted and were choosing to do only this much. I began to understand. Humans were not weak. Humans were not primitive. Humans were in truth the most frightening species any of us had ever met, and we had never seen them truly angry until now, because we had mistaken their kindness for inability. My palace staff brought me reports all through the night. The Krell Dominion had gone silent. Their leaders had fled. Their capital, Lord Thasic himself, had boarded a fast ship and tried to escape to a hidden Krell colony he had not made. A human vessel had intercepted his escape ship near the edge of the Krell system. The human captain, a young woman named Rebecca Hollies, had broadcast a message across all open channels. Lord Thasic of the Krell Dominion, you are asked to surrender yourself to face justice for the unlawful execution of Ambassador Elias Vance. You have 10 minutes to respond. Your ship contains civilian staff and family members. Their safety is guaranteed if you comply. Thasic had responded by trying to flee faster. The human ship had followed patiently. It did not attack. It just kept pace. When the 10 minutes ended, Captain Hollies had spoken again. Lord Thasic, your ship cannot outrun us. Your escape is not possible. Please do not force us to harm those who are innocent around you. He had finally stopped. The civilians aboard had been taken to safety. Thasic himself had been placed in custody. I watched the footage of his surrender. On the news, he looked old, afraid. Fearsome lord who had ruled the Concordat for 40 years looked, for the first time, like a man who had made a very bad mistake. I finally understood what I needed to do. I called my aides together. Open a direct channel to Earth, I said, to whoever will receive it. I wish to make a statement. My senior aide hesitated. High Matron. They may not answer, they may consider us enemies. Then we will find out what kind of enemies we have become. The channel opened. I recorded my message myself. No writers, no advisors. Just me speaking to the screen. To the people of Earth, I said, my name is Selva, High Matron of the Vorum Collective. 3 days ago I voted to condemn your envoy to death. I knew the evidence was false. I voted anyway. I was a coward and I chose my trade. Contracts over my principles. I will not ask for mercy for myself. I ask only for my people. They did not vote. They did not decide. I did. If there is to be punishment, let it fall on me, and let the Vorum Collective itself be allowed to continue. I will surrender myself to your custody. Without resistance, I will face whatever judgment your world requires. I sent the message. My aide stood in shocked silence. The reply came back within an hour, but it did not come from Admiral Tanaka. It came from a name I did not know. Clara Vance, widow of Elias Vance. Her message was short, 3 sentences. Only, I read them on my private screen. Alone in the dim light of my palace. My husband spent 6 years trying to help. You see us as equals, you chose not to. Now you will see us as we truly are. Prepare your surrender or prepare your apologies. I sat in silence for a long time after reading those words. I understood at last what kind of species we had awakened, not conquerors, not destroyers, something far more patient. Humans had offered us their kindness freely as a gift. We had spat on the gift. Now they were taking it back carefully and precisely, showing us exactly what it had been worth. I closed my eyes. I thought of Ambassador Vance sitting at his dinners, smiling politely at people like me who had dismissed him. I thought of how he must have felt, carrying the hopes of his whole world on his shoulders, watching us sneer at him. I thought of his wife reading those 3 sentences into a camera with her husband's killers watching. I made my decision. I recorded a second message. This one was to my own people. Citizens of the Vorum Collective, I have committed a grave error. I will surrender myself to the humans for judgment. Our collective will cooperate fully with the new order they establish. We will dissolve our military command structures as they require. We will pay the reparations they ask. We will accept their terms because their terms are just. I paused. And to any leader of any species who is still debating whether to resist the humans, I offer you this wisdom bought with my own shame. You cannot win. You were never going to win. You did not understand them when they were smiling, and you do not understand them now. Surrender, confess, ask for their judgment. It is the only path that leads to a future. I sent the message. Across the Vorum Collective, my people began to lower their shields. Military bases broadcast signals of non-resistance. Officers laid down their command codes. 7 of the other 14 species, seeing our example, began to follow. Not all of them, some were still trying to fight, some were still sending fleets against the humans. Those fleets one by one stopped reporting in. I prepared myself for the arrival of the human ship that would take me into custody. I did not pack much, a few personal items, a small portrait of my late daughter who had died many decades ago. I would not need more where I was going. Before the ship arrived, I recorded one final personal note. I sent it to my former aide, the one who had burst into my office 3 days ago. Remember this, I told her, the humans did not change, they were always this. They simply stopped smiling. Do not ever forget what that cost us, and do not ever let our children grow up believing that kindness is weakness. The humans taught us the truth of that lesson. We must never need to learn it again. I walked out to the landing pad. The human ship was already descending through my palace's atmosphere. I never asked for any of this. I want anyone who hears this, anyone who learns about these events long after I am gone, to know that I never asked to become the face of my world's answer to the galaxy. My name is Clara Vance. I was a xenolinguist. I studied alien languages. I taught university classes. I made breakfast for my daughter every morning. Before school, I was and still am just a person. And then my husband was killed in front of 800 worlds, and my life stopped being mine. 3 days after Elias died, the Earth Council sent a delegation to my home. They came in 2 black vehicles with quiet engines. An old admiral named Helena Corsia led them. She had silver hair and very tired eyes. She sat across from me at my kitchen table, where Elias used to drink his morning coffee, and she told me what she needed. Mrs. Vance, she said gently, we need a civilian face for what comes next. Someone the galaxy has wronged personally. Someone who is not a soldier, someone whose pain is real and whose voice will carry weight. You want me to speak for humanity? I said. Yes. I looked out the window. Maya was in the backyard pushing her swing with her feet. She did not know yet that I was going to leave her for a while. She did not know anything except that her father was not coming home. I am not a diplomat, I said. My husband was the diplomat. Your husband is the reason they will listen to you, Admiral Corsia said. They killed him in front of the whole galaxy. If his widow stands before them and speaks, nobody will be able to look away. I thought about it for a long moment. What will I have to do? You will travel to the captured worlds. You will preside over the trials of the officials who signed his death. You will deliver the terms of the new galactic order. You will be the voice that tells the Concordat what their future looks like. And the soldiers, the ships, the response. All of that is already happening. Admiral Tanaka is handling the military response. What we need from you is something else. We need a human face for our mercy and for our limits. I looked at my daughter through the window. She was 7 years old. Her father had promised to teach her to ride a bicycle this summer. That promise would now never be kept. I thought about what Elias would have wanted. Elias would have wanted peace. But Elias was not here anymore, and the peace he had worked for had been broken by the same hands that had taken his life. Peace now required something Elias had not lived to deliver. It required truth. And truth, I was learning, was not always gentle. Who will watch Maya? I asked. Your sister has agreed to stay with her. For as long as you need. I closed my eyes. Yes, I said, I will do it. 2 weeks later, I was standing on the bridge of the human flagship Evening Star as it entered orbit above the captured Cal capital. And GT snorts. And GT. I wore a simple dark suit, no medals, no military rank, just a widow doing her duty. The ship's captain was a woman named Priya Shelton, in her early 40s. Kind-eyed but serious, she had lost a brother in the Mars conflict 20 years ago. She understood grief. She did not try to give me false comfort. Mrs. Vance, she said as the planet spun slowly beneath us, the tribunal chamber is ready. The first group of officials is prepared for questioning. Are you ready to begin? No, I said honestly, but I will begin. Anyway, the Cal capital had once been a beautiful city. It still was in its own strange way, but now human peacekeepers walked its streets, keeping order. The old government had collapsed. The citizens were frightened but unharmed. Humans had been very careful about that. I was taken to the tribunal chamber in a quiet convoy. I walked through the captured halls where Lord Thasic had once ruled. The walls still bore the marks of precision strikes, small and exact, where human weapons had removed military targets without touching anything else. I stopped once to look at such a mark, a perfectly clean hole through a command station right next to a civilian art gallery that was completely untouched. The precision was almost unbelievable. The tribunal chamber was large and round. The captured officials were brought in one by one to face questioning. My role was not judge. I was a witness, a voice, and in some cases the final decider of mercy. The first day was hard. I questioned 12 senior officials. I asked each one the same 3 questions. Did you know the evidence against Ambassador Vance was false? Did you vote against him anyway? Do you wish to confess and show remorse? Some confessed, some did not. Those who confessed and cooperated fully were sentenced to years of rebuilding work, helping construct schools and hospitals on human colony worlds. Those who lied or refused to acknowledge their actions were sentenced to long imprisonment on remote penal colonies. None of them were harmed. Humans did not repeat the wrong that had been done to us. On the 4th day, I questioned High Matron Selvera of the Vorin Collective. She walked into the chamber slowly. She was a tall, thin being with silver skin and wide, sad eyes. She did not wait for my first question. I voted against your husband, she said. Immediately, I knew the evidence was false. I voted anyway because I was afraid of Lord Thasic. I am guilty. I will accept any punishment. I looked at her for a long time. Why did you surrender yourself so quickly? I asked. Because the day after my vote I could not sleep. The day after that I could not eat. The day after that I understood what I had done. And when your Admiral Tanaka's broadcast ended, I understood what it would cost. I did not surrender because I was afraid of you. I surrendered because I was ashamed of myself. I considered her carefully. High Matron, I said, you will serve 30 years of service on human colony worlds, rebuilding what your complicity helped to destroy. You will not be harmed. When your sentence ends, you will be free to return to your people if they will still have you. She bowed her head. Thank you, Mrs. Vance. Do not thank me, I said. Thank yourself. You confessed before judgment. Fell, that matters. Humans understand the difference between strategic surrender and real remorse. You showed real remorse. That is why you will live to see the end of your sentence. She was taken from the chamber. I watched her go with a strange feeling in my chest. I did not forgive her. I was not sure I would ever forgive any of them, but I understood more than ever what Elias had meant when he wrote in his journal that humans were not here to become what had been done to us. On the seventh day, they brought in Lord Thasek. He walked into the chamber in simple prisoner clothes. His cracked stone skin looked duller than it had in the broadcast. His pale blue eyes still burned, but the fire in them was now a smaller thing. He did not bow. He did not kneel. He stood tall and proud, because pride was all he had left. He spat at my feet. Monkey in a suit, he said. The guards moved to correct him. I raised my hand to stop them. Lord Thasek, I said calmly, I will ask you one question. Why did you arrange my husband's death? He smiled. It was the same smile I had seen on the broadcast, cold and empty. To keep your kind in your place, he said. Your species should never have been granted a voice. We were going to make an example of you, to remind the galaxy what happens when primitives rise too high. I nodded slowly. Thank you for your honest answer, I said. The galactic press had expected me to order his death. They had prepared their headlines. The entire Concordat was waiting to see if humans would do to Thasek what he had done to Elias. I looked at him for a long moment. I thought about Elias. I thought about Maya, who would grow up without her father. I thought about every person who had loved someone who was taken too soon. Lord Thasek, I said, you will spend the rest of your life on a human penal world. You will be given work to do. You will be given meals. You will be given medical care. You will not be harmed. You will simply live every day for the rest of your long life, knowing that the species you tried to destroy chose not to destroy you. That knowledge is your sentence. May it teach you something before the end. The chamber was silent. Thasek stared at me for the first time. Something like real fear crossed his face. He had expected death. He had prepared himself for it. He had not prepared for this. This is crueler than death, he whispered. No, I said, it is simply justice. You would not have understood death. You may eventually understand this. They led him away. That evening, I sat alone in my quarters. On the evening star, I opened my husband's journal, which I had brought with me across many systems. I turned to the last entry he had written before leaving Earth for the fatal meeting. The last line on the last page read, "If I fail, let humanity be better than what broke me. Let us build, not burn." I closed the book. I pressed it against my chest, and for the first time since his death, I allowed myself to cry, not the quiet tears of the widow, the heartbreaking sobs of a wife who had lost her husband and could not bring him back, no matter what justice I delivered. Maya was far away on Earth, probably sleeping. I thought about how I would explain all of this to her one day. I thought about how she would remember her father. I hoped she would remember him as he was, a kind man who tried to build bridges, and not as the symbol he had become. The next morning, I began preparing my speech for the new Galactic Assembly. The day of the assembly came 3 months. Later, delegates from 43 species gathered at a new neutral station built by human engineers in just 8 weeks. Old chamber, where Ilias had died, had been closed forever. The new chamber was simpler. Plain wood, plain seats, a single round table. I stood at the head of the table. I looked at the faces of the delegates. Some looked afraid, some looked ashamed, some looked hopeful. All of them looked at me like I had the power of life and death in my hands, and perhaps in that moment I did. I am not a leader, I began. I am a widow and a mother and a teacher. I am here to tell you what the galaxy will look like from this day forward. No species would be judged without representation. No envoy would be harmed. Under diplomatic protection, no vote would be manipulated with false evidence. Violations would meet proportional response. Humanity would not rule this new concordat. We would anchor it. We would be the quiet force that made sure the rules stayed rules. We would keep our deep reserve, our many ships in the dark, not as a threat, but as a promise. A promise that never again would a species try what the Dominion had tried. A promise that never again would a diplomat die in front of the whole watching universe. My husband believed in peace, I said. He believed until the moment the light took him. I will honor that belief by building the peace he could not finish. But I will honor his memory by making certain that peace has teeth. Humans know what peace without strength becomes. We will not let the galaxy learn that lesson again. I sat down. The delegates were silent for a long moment. Then one by one, they stood and pressed their hands to their hearts, or whatever each species used for that gesture. 43 species together, acknowledging a new order. That night in my quarters, a message arrived from a species I had barely spoken to. The Illuminator. They had abstained from the original vote against Ilias. Their ambassador, a quiet being named Van, sent a simple question. What do humans want the galaxy to look like? I thought about that question for a long time. I opened my husband's journal one more time. I read the words again. Let us build, not burn. I wrote my reply. We want a galaxy where envoys come home to their families. We want a galaxy where children do not watch their parents die on the evening news. We want a galaxy where kindness is not mistaken for weakness and strength is not mistaken for cruelty. We want what every species should want, a home that is safe. Help us build it. I sent the message. Outside my window, the stars burned cold and clear. Somewhere in the dark, the deep reserve still watched. Somewhere on Earth, my daughter was sleeping, and somewhere I hoped, in whatever came after this life, my husband was watching too. I hoped he was proud. I am standing in the new grand chamber of the neutral station, and I am about to give the most important speech of my life. I am 34 years old. My hands are steady. My voice is ready. My father has been gone for 27 years. My name is Maya Vance. I'm a historian. Today, I am delivering the keynote speech at the ceremony marking the 27th anniversary of the Human Charter. The chamber is full. 43 species are in attendance. Nobody is armed. Nobody needs to be. I was 7 years old when my father was killed. I remember the evening clearly. I was sitting on the living room carpet, playing with a wooden puzzle my grandfather had carved. My mother was in the kitchen making soup. The news program was on the television in the background. My mother had forgotten it was on. She did not remember until the broadcast cut to the emergency feed and my father's face filled the screen. By the time she ran from the kitchen to turn it off, I had already seen. I had already understood in the way that children understand things without having the words for them that something terrible was happening to my father. I remember the light growing bright. I remember the screen going black. I remember my mother dropping to her knees on the carpet beside me and pulling me into her arms so tight I could barely breathe. I remember her whispering over and over, "I am so sorry, Maya. I am so sorry you saw that. I am so sorry." I did not understand that night what would come next. I did not understand that my mother would leave for months to deliver justice across the galaxy. I did not understand that my father's name would be spoken in 43 languages for the rest of time. I only understood that he was not coming home. He had promised to teach me to ride a bicycle that summer. I never did learn until I taught myself. When I was 9, I did not want anyone else to teach me. That was supposed to be his job. But this speech is not about me, or rather it is, but only in the way that all our stories are about us and also about something larger. This speech is about what my father's death taught the galaxy and what the galaxy taught itself in the years that followed. I walk to the front of the chamber. I look out at the delegates. There are species here that did not exist as political powers when I was a child. There are young diplomats whose grandparents voted against my father. There are also survivors, old beings, now who remember the 40-day response as a living memory. I take a breath. Honored delegates, I begin. I stand before you today not as the voice of Earth, but as the daughter of a man you killed and the daughter of a woman who taught you how to live with what you had done. The chamber is silent. My father believed until his final breath that peace was possible. He believed that species could set aside old hatreds and build something better together. He believed this even when it became clear that many of you did not believe it. He continued to believe it right up until the moment the light took him from me. I pause. My mother believed something different. My mother believed that peace is possible, but only when built on a foundation of honesty. She believed that species who pretend to be friends while preparing to betray you are not friends at all. She believed that the kindest thing humans could do for the galaxy was to stop lying to ourselves about what we were capable of. Her beliefs were harder than my father's, but her beliefs were what allowed all of us to be sitting in this room today. I walk to the side of the podium. The large display behind me shows images from the 40-day response, ships of the Deep Reserve, precision strikes that missed every civilian target, the peaceful surrender of 7 species in under 2 weeks. There is a story our historians do not often tell. I say, during the 40-day response, humans destroyed more than 1,200 enemy warships. We captured more than 30,000 enemy military officers. We removed from power every leader who had signed the false evidence against my father. I pause again. And in all of that action, we killed no civilians, not one. Some were wounded in collateral incidents. We compensated every family. We paid for every injury. We apologized in person through Delegates sent to every affected world. We did what no victorious military in galactic history had ever done. We treated the defeated as we wished we had been treated. I look at the delegates. This was not weakness, this was the opposite of weakness. This was the strongest thing our species has ever done, because it would have been so much easier to become what you expected us to become. It would have been so satisfying to pay back the cruelty in kind. My mother in her grief could have ordered that. Admiral Tanaka in his anger could have ordered that. Admiral Corsia in her grim certainty could have ordered that. They did not. They chose instead to be what my father had believed we could be. I gesture to the chamber. That is why we are all here today, not because humans were kind, because humans were both capable of terrible things and chose not to do them. That choice is what peace looks like, not the inability to harm, the refusal to harm held by beings who could do worse. I let those words hang in the air. Before the 40-day response, most of the Concordat believed that civilization meant the loss of the capacity for violence. My father once wrote in his private journal that this belief was the galaxy's greatest weakness. A species that cannot harm is not peaceful, it is simply harmless. A species that can reduce worlds to ash and chooses instead to build hospitals on them is something else entirely. That is the species my father believed we could be. That is the species my mother proved we already were. I walk slowly back to the center of the podium. My father loved the galaxy, even the parts of it that did not love him back. He studied your cultures, he learned your languages, he sat at your dinner tables and laughed at jokes that did not translate well just to make you feel seen. He was not a soldier pretending to be a diplomat, he was a true diplomat, the best our species has ever produced. And when you killed him, you did not kill a spy or a warrior, you killed a man who genuinely wanted to help you. My voice stays steady. I have practiced this for weeks. That is what makes the 40-day response so important. We did not strike back in rage at enemies we hated. We struck back in sorrow at friends we had hoped to make. The difference matters. It matters because rage demands more rage. Sorrow eventually can learn to forgive. I look at the delegates again. I want to introduce someone now, someone who has not spoken at a galactic assembly in many years. She is old now. Her journey to be here today was long and tiring. She is here because I asked her to come and she did not refuse. Because we have reached an understanding. Across all these years, a small figure rises slowly from the front row. She leans on a carved walking stick. Her silver skin is paler now, thinner with age. Her eyes are still wide and sad, but there is peace in them now. Peace bought at the cost of 30 years of service on human colony worlds, followed by another 30 years of quiet work as a teacher, and now, at the age of 268, her final years of retirement. Former High Matron Selvera of the Voron Collective. She walks slowly to the podium. The chamber is silent. Many of the younger delegates do not recognize her. The older ones do. Some look uncomfortable. Some look respectful. I step aside for her. She stands at the microphone. She looks out at the room. Her voice, when it comes, is thin but clear. I voted, she says, to kill Ambassador Elias Vance. I knew the evidence was false. I voted for fear and for trade. Contracts, I was a coward and I was wronged. She pauses. She takes a shaking breath. I have spent 60 years trying to become someone who would not have voted that way. I have built schools. I have taught children. I have served my sentence, and then I have served beyond my sentence, because my sentence could never be long enough. Today I stand before you at the end of my life to say only 3 things. She holds up one long finger. I was wrong. She holds up a second finger. I am sorry. She holds up a third finger. Thank you, Clara Vance, for letting me live long enough to try to become better. My mother is in the front row. Her hair is fully gray now. She leans on her own cane. Her eyes are wet, but her back is straight. She nods once to Selvera. The chamber erupts in quiet, respectful applause, not triumphant applause, not celebratory, something gentler, the sound of a galaxy acknowledging that its long wound finally is nearly healed. Selvera returns to her seat. I step back to the podium. My father used to say, I continue, that the measure of a civilization is not what it does when it is strong. Any species can be kind when it is winning. The measure of a civilization is what it does when it has been wounded, when it has every reason to lash out, when nobody would blame it for becoming monstrous. The measure is whether that moment the civilization still remembers who it wanted to be. I look at each section of the chamber in turn. Humanity was wounded on the day my father died. We had every reason to become something terrible. We had the weapons for it. We had the ships for it. We had, in the hot early hours after the broadcast, even the anger for it. But we had something else too. We had the memory of our own history, the memory of what our species had done to itself during our many wars, the memory of the moments when we had not remembered who we wanted to be. And we had the shame of those moments carried in our collective bones, warning us not to repeat them. I pause. So we did not repeat them. We answered precisely what had been done to us. We protected every civilian we could. We built a new order that would make this tragedy impossible to repeat. And then, most importantly, we let the galaxy heal. We did not demand tribute. We did not demand worship. We asked only for accountability, for reformed laws, and for the chance to sit as equals at the table, nothing more. I take a deep breath. That is what my father died for, not the response that followed, not the new charter, the death itself, because his death was what finally made the galaxy see us not as primitives, not as conquerors, as what we always were. Species that remembers what it is like to hurt and chooses with every generation not to become the thing that hurted. I look at my mother. She is watching me with that expression I have seen on her face for 27 years, pride, love, grief. The 3 things that never fully separate from each other once you have lived long enough. I will close with one final thought. I say humans are no longer feared in this galaxy. On many worlds we are loved. Human colonies share their medicine freely. Human scientists work beside scholars from 100 species. Human students study on campuses that would not have existed 30 years ago. The peace is real. It is good. It is what my father dreamed of. I pause. But every human child still learns the name Elias Vance. Every human officer still studies the 40-day response. Every human diplomat still carries, alongside Their credentials, the codes for weapons. The galaxy has not seen in 27 years. We have not forgotten what peace costs. We have not forgotten what betrayal feels like. We hope we never need to remember what comes after betrayal. We pray with every generation that this hope holds. I look out one last time. Peace is a garden. Humans are the species that remembers when it was a battlefield, and we are the species that knows in our honest hearts how quickly a garden can be lost if the gardeners become careless. I step down from the podium. The applause is long and quiet. It goes on for some time. When it ends, I walk slowly down the aisle toward my mother. She rises to meet me. She takes my hand. Her fingers are thin now, wrinkled with age, but her grip is still strong. Together, we walk out of the chamber. Above the station, visible through the transparent dome of the connecting corridor, the stars of 43 civilizations glitter in peace somewhere out there. In the cold dark between the systems, the deep reserve still watches, still waits, still hopes it will never be needed. My mother squeezes my hand. He would have been proud of you, she says softly. He would have been proud of you too. I answer. She smiles. It is the smile of a woman who has lived through the worst possible thing and come out the other side, carrying the light of her love with her, refusing to let the darkness have the last word. We did not inherit this galaxy, Maya, she says, and her voice carries the weight of every year she has lived since that terrible night when I was 7. We earned it. We paid for it with your father's life and with the lives of everyone the Dominion took before him. And we will never, ever let the galaxy forget what would cost. We keep walking, mother and daughter, through the corridor under the stars. Behind us, the chamber where I spoke is already emptying. The delegates are going back to their ships. The ceremony is ending. Another year of peace is marked, another year of the long quiet that my father bought with his death and my mother enforced with her resolve, and my generation now holds in our careful hands. Ahead of us, a small transport is waiting to take us home, home to Earth, home to the quiet house where my father's journals are still kept on a shelf in the study, home to the backyard where the swing set still stands, though I am far too old to sit in it now. My mother leans against me a little as we walk. She is tired. She has earned her rest. Mama, I say quietly, do you think the galaxy will remember 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now? Will they still know the story? She considers this for a long moment. They will know the story, she says. Finally, but more importantly, they will know the lesson. Stories fade. Lessons, if they are taught well, stay forever. We taught this lesson very well, Maya. Your father taught it with his death. I taught it with my justice. You are teaching it now with your history. And every human who comes after us will carry a small piece of it, whether they know they are carrying it or not. She looks up at the stars. That is how civilizations remember, not through stories alone, through the shape of who we become. We reach the transport. The stars burn on above us, and somewhere in the dark between them, humanity keeps its quiet watch and keeps its quiet peace and keeps always its quiet promise. Never again. The end.